Hi, I'm Kevin Smith. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized, where we talk about leadership experiences of our guest. And joining us for the second week, hopefully you had a chance to hear the great words of wisdom from him last week on the Leadership Synergized episode, is Dr. Eric Goggins, the district superintendent of North Gibson School Corporation, located in Princeton, Indiana, which is in the southwestern portion of the state of Indiana. Dr. Goggins, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, for having me back.
Thank you. What great words of wisdom last week, and appreciated the sharing of your experiences and what you have found to work in your leadership growth, your personal growth, your professional growth. And want to pick up on a topic that I think was really constant and consistent when Eric Goggins is telling his story, and that is the focus on people, the people-centered aspect. In many ways today, there's a lot of things that come at leaders, data, different viewing priorities of focus, perhaps, in particular in schools where the school community may have a multitude of priorities coming from the public, coming from boards, coming from staff, coming from the classroom. How have you found it possible to remain consistent with that people-centered approach and not allow all the things that may come at a leader to pull you away from that?
I've been very fortunate here at North Gibson to work with a school board who, both as assistant superintendent and superintendent, had trusted me to lead, but also were willing to provide their input and have a very direct effect on what they want to see for the district and what they think is best for the community and our district approach, and really having that collaboration time with myself and our administrative team to form what are the areas we can improve upon, and having a laser focus in developing those areas and focusing our assets and our resources to make those improvements. I think that has been critical for us here at North Gibson, that we certainly want to be better academically. We want to have better outcomes for our student. If we ever feel like we're doing that perfectly, we need to move on, because we're always going to have opportunities for improvement in that area. And that's going to come in ways based off the changing demographics of a community. And this community in Princeton, certainly over the course of time, have had significant shifts in the demographics from a more affluent community to a very working class, blue collar community, with free and reduced lunch rates going from the 80s and 90s in the 20% range to we currently sit in 50 or just above 50%. And I think as an administrator, we can't use that as an excuse for our performance, but we also have to understand that there's barriers there that take time, and also lots of resources and planning and collaboration and focus on specific goals to get there. So as I've come into becoming superintendent from being assistant superintendent, I had seen some things that I thought, someday if I'm leading the district, I want to shift some resources to do these things. And we needed to provide our teachers more time to collaborate. So we implemented some time to do that with what we call late start Wednesdays. So we start school at 8:30 instead of 8, and our teachers are collaborating PLCs with their grade level teams and department level teams from 8:40 or from 7:45 to 8:30. So 45 minutes, and it's about talking about student needs. It's about looking at student data. There might be a specific improvement area from a school improvement plan that also feeds to a district improvement area that we're focusing on. And one of those right now, like at our high school, is creating some cohesiveness between our current technical offerings for career paths, and also having ways to embed job skills and within that, and assessing and monitoring the growth in those job and employability skills. I feel like if we want to stay focused on our goals and our missions to improve students and improve student outcomes, while also focusing on an administrative goal of supporting and improving our instruction and teachers in the classroom, you've got to be able to bring those things into attention to where, how do we do that by providing time and making people feel supported and having opportunities to collaborate about the challenges and come up with solutions to those challenges. If every challenge the solution comes from me or from a school board or from a principal, the people who have to be in the trenches and do the work to make those improvements aren't going to see that positive influence the way we do if they didn't have an opportunity to build the solutions and collaborate and have those meaningful discussions about what are the barriers and challenges to why we're not performing. And we were really missing that. I think a lot of schools miss that opportunity. And I just took that as a challenge of, I've always felt that way from being a teacher to being a principal to being in district level administration is we expect a lot of people. We expect a lot of change. The state expects a lot of change and positive outcomes. The federal government expects positive outcome changes, but we never give enough time for people to figure it out. And we wonder why we get in that vicious cycle of initiatives. And it's because the people who are doing the work don't get enough input to be the leaders and the experts in the field. And I'm just have a mission to not be that type of leader. And there's challenges to that. There's challenges to, do you ever give enough voice to the people who are in the classroom doing the work? I don't think we could ever do enough to give voice to that most important employee in our district, which is our teachers, who have to instruct and deliver that outcome every day. So that's just something I've been laser focused on in my leadership as a superintendent right now, is giving people opportunities to collaborate and work together. And that's still a challenge for us, but we're slowly making progress at that.
Dr. Goggins, the area you just discussed really is at the heart of, as you see, the backdrop, the still leadership model and philosophy. And in particular, I hear in a very consistent manner the love you have for what you do as a leader, but the opportunity to serve people and to be an educator. There are probably a number of individuals questioning, why would someone want to be an educator today? The one thing that I found consistently is there's that love of serving the legacy of education, which really is being there for the people around, the students, the children, the staff, the school community, even those who may have disagreements. There's a love and passion to serve in that regard.
Yeah, and I can't, it would be dishonest of me to say every day I come in with the most positive attitude, because that's not realistic. There's days that this job's challenging, and the people outside of education that often say, man, I can't believe you want to be a superintendent. I can't believe you want to be in education. There's days where I go home at night thinking, man, I never thought I'd have to deal with that issue. And I can't believe that issue happened, and I had to deal with that. And those days are discouraging, but I always try to center myself around, if not me, then who? And if not the people who care about kids that are in our classrooms right now, if they give up on kids, then who? There's not a large number of people who value our career field, and we're our own worst enemies in that as educators sometimes, because we share our frustrations openly, sometimes in social media, our frustrations with the career and the level of disrespect sometimes from outside pressures of opinions and viewpoints of education. But then I look back at kids, and the kids I often look at are the kids that I have the biggest passion for, are the kids that, if we weren't here for them, what would they have? Early in my principal career, and it's hard to not get emotional about that, but early in my principal career, I made my very first year, I had a student that was coming in, and he came in, and the teacher was so frustrated because he didn't smell great. It clearly had some cleanliness issues. And one day he opens up his backpack, and out crawl a bunch of cockroaches, not a little, a large amount. And the teacher was so upset, and rightfully, my goodness. And I honestly, in that moment, I was like, I just can't believe that this could happen. And so I'm like, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to visit with the parents. A bit naive in doing that as a very early principal. And I thought, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to take the approach of, what can I do to help you? Not why or how could you not do this? And I go out to this house, and they were so welcoming and open to me, and they invite me in, and I walk in and they're living on a dirt floor. And that they didn't have any utilities running at that time. And at one point I was angry when I found out that this kid was coming uncared for. And I go out and visit, and these people were so nice and welcoming to me, and it's just who they were, and their struggle was real. And if we weren't there for that kid and weren't a resource to those parents and and that family, that kid may not have a successful life. And we only have so much influence in that. But I learned very quickly in that moment of, when you're a teacher, you don't always get to know all of those things. And that moment in that, being an administrator, I learned very quickly that kids need us. And if they don't have school, and they don't have people who believe in them at school, and families don't have people at school who are willing to look at things and their challenges from a perspective of need and care for others, what are we doing? And why are we in the field? And unfortunately, we lose track of that at times when we've got kids who are having significant behavior issues that are affecting others in the classroom. But I always go back to that moment of my first home visit as a principal, and seeing that dirt floor. And we have to come from a perspective of care and what can I do to help you, before we ever go into a moment of judgment of others. And people need help, and more so now than ever. And it's just tough to see some of the kids who are struggling, and families that are struggling beyond any aspect that they know how to help. And we've got to be that for people, even when it's tough to be that for people. And I just refuse to not be that.
Great example of where love is embodied in educators. Thank you for sharing that story, Dr. Goggins. And it does put it very much into relevant aspects of daily struggles and challenges that educators are committed to face and help their children with in that regard. It also leads to a question, Dr. Goggins, for you. When it comes to the still aspect and concept, Coach John Wooden, and I'm paraphrasing, has been quoted as telling his players, be quick, but don't hurry. Seems like an oxymoron, a paradox in that piece. Sometimes, and I've been in your seat, much smaller school corporation, different situations, obviously, but some similarities. As a leader, sometimes that mind is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use a generational term, fast forwarding of the tape. Back when we had cassettes, it just going like this. And for leaders to truly be able to perform to their highest level potential and effectiveness, they've got to have the ability to slow things down, to be able to make the right decisions, to be able to observe properly and bring in everything of pertinence, and then make that decision. How are you effective in that manner? Or what experience can you share someone who's maybe struggling with slowing things down to be able to move ahead?
In some ways, I've learned that by mistakes. I think my worst mistakes and worst decisions I've made as a leader were in moments that I rushed to make a decision on someone else's timeline. And I had to learn, and Dr. Harmon, who I respect greatly and has been a mentor and a great friend, that was one of the first things he told me as assistant superintendent when I came to work under him as his assistant. Was one of the things he noticed in me was I'm a problem solver, and oftentimes I want to solve problems very quickly because I worry about, if I don't solve that quickly, what's that lead to beyond what the current problem is, or what's the perception of someone's got a concern that I need to solve quickly, because if not, they're going to be out there talking about it. And he had to have that conversation with me of, we want to solve problems, but we can't solve problems on someone else's timeline, because we have to slow down and make sure that we have good information to know exactly what that problem and concern is, or if that even exists, before we make a decision. And I've always valued that and kept that in mind. And I still catch myself rushing to make a decision. And that's something I continuously tell my administrative team is, okay, this feels really big, but we need to take our time, the appropriate time, to make sure we understand if this really is as big as it feels. And it always feels much bigger in those early moments of having a problem than it turns out to really be. And some people by nature are panic and solve. And if you don't constantly keep that in mind, you have people who make mistakes. And sometimes as a superintendent, I will let those mistakes happen in a constructive way that I know isn't going to cause much harm to a building leader or a team member, because you need to learn lessons by mistakes, and you shouldn't always try to stop people from making decisions that okay, that might not work. Sometimes it's okay, that's probably not going to work, but I need to let them make that decision and figure that out, and then have the discussion of why did that not work, and not tell them why it's not going to work. And I'm never going to let a principal make a bad decision that's going to hurt the district or hurt their leadership in the long run. But sometimes you've got to let people make mistakes. And I've had to learn that from slowing down as a superintendent, that don't try to solve everyone's problems. Let other people solve problems that are in positions to be problem solvers, and guide them. And sometimes don't rush to stop people from making a decision that they feel is important, but you think may not work. And you may be wrong that it does work for them, but also there's learning opportunities in making mistakes. And I believe strongly that I've made some of my biggest growth as a leader through other people letting me make those decisions and potentially making mistakes. But those people always came back to me when it didn't work and said, okay, here's what I knew wasn't going to work for you. Why did it not work? And then they share with me, experience will now help you not make that decision and think about that differently. So I think that's a challenge as a superintendent who's in charge of everything. Is there's always a problem, and the people you lead always have problems that they feel they need to fix, or they want you to fix. I still struggle, though I feel like I'm getting better, of what are the problems I need to fix and what are the problems I need to let other people decide if they want to fix. And I think that's something I need to grow in. And that's why I rely heavily on the people who I've always relied on, and Dr. Harmon, and area superintendents who are more experienced than me, and people that I respect and trust to continue to guide and mentor me. I'm far from knowing everything about doing the job of superintendent. And I don't know that I'll ever feel like I know how to do the job of being superintendent. And you got to have that circle of trust with people who can guide you and mentor you. And then you got to take that wisdom and pass that on in the way you lead your people so that they can grow their leadership. You can't do everything for people. Though I often want to, as a people pleaser, I often want to just do things. And that's not an effective way of leading.
I was just getting ready to say, sometimes, maybe many times, for people who are people-centered, the first thing that they want to do is immediately solve the problem for someone. As Abraham Lincoln's quoted as saying, sometimes the worst thing we can do is that which another should be capable of doing themselves. And we lose sight of that because of just wanting to serve. So thank you for sharing great words of wisdom, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. And but before we put a wrap on this episode and these 2 weeks with Dr. Eric Goggins, Dr. Goggins, let me ask, if there's one piece of advice you would offer a leader, maybe taking that first step, maybe it's earlier than they had planned on taking that step into a leadership role, what would that advice be?
I would look for and accept an opportunity that's going to allow you to be jumping into a role of serving people and not fixing problems. If you are going into a position where there's an expectation that these problems are here and they need to be fixed, I would really evaluate, is that the right place to get your career started? You need the opportunity. There's going to be things you realize you've got to address quickly, but you need to be able to establish that. And if you start your career in a position where you can't build relationships, you will not be successful. And often people are looking for leaders to come into a new role. From the people you serve, their perspective is, we want someone who's going to come here and work with us and trust us and get to know us before they tell us that we're not good at this. And if you're looking at a position, you're interviewing, and you're seeing through that interview process that there's a specific need that you need to come in and fix this, You need to evaluate, are you capable of doing that? And what's your leadership style and what type of leader do you want to be? And say no. I was fortunate. I got to say yes to a position at 25 years old that was, I can come in and this building is sound. There's no expectations that I got to come in and fix this or do this. And I got to just be me. And I got the opportunity to get to know people and build relationships and prove that I cared about them. And then what they would be telling you the things they want you to help them do. And I'm just really hesitant. I won't say at some point in my career that when you might want to take a challenge because, hey, I could go, my leadership skills I've built from being a leader are going to help this school district or this school get through what they need and be the leader they need. But if I'm going in right away as my first leadership opportunity, I'm looking for a place that I can get to know people, that I can build relationships, that I can lead through relationships, not lead through fixing problems. You need the ability as an administrator to formulate what are the things the building needs as a very early career administrator. That's just my personal philosophy on it. And fortunately, I didn't take the wrong position, and I haven't taken wrong positions for my leadership style or to be a fixer of problems. And that's worked out for me in my career to where I've been able to spend some significant years in one place and make my way up through proving my leadership of people, not the leadership of fixing problems. And that's the leader I want to be, is a leader of people. And I want to live through actions of caring for others. And that's always what I'm going to look for first when I'm looking to be a leader in a school district or a school.
Said, my friend. Regarding Dr. Eric Goggins' next growth area, what's ahead for you? What will you focus on?
I want to be better at the role of superintendent. Is you always think you know what it is when you sit in the seat next door as the assistant. You have a good leader who lets you really get involved in knowing the ins and outs of being a superintendent because you have the desire to be that and they see that value in you. But it's a whole lot different when you sit in the seat than when you're sitting next to it. And I feel like I've got to continue to grow and being more, continuing that accessibility, continuing that observation of the district, fine tuning and formulating the goals of the district, and not letting too much influence grow us beyond what those laser focused 2 or 3 goals are. And I've got to be better at getting people who I serve and who are leaders to fine tune our vision into those issues. Because there's so much coming at a superintendent, I'm realizing that, well, we can do this and maybe that'll help us. We can do this and maybe that will help us. And I'm not very focused on, okay, but how does that fit into the things we've established as our priorities? Because I'm starting to feel that overwhelmed feeling. And if I feel that overwhelmed feeling of we're doing too much and we're not accomplishing enough in the things we said we want to focus on, that spreads and everyone is feeling that if I'm feeling. So I've just got to be better at, as a leader of the district, to say, how does that fit within what we've established as this is what our focus is for the next 3 to 5 years, and not let us get pulled out into too many areas that we can't do those things really well. And for us, those are things that are most important to improving our student outcomes and improving our work environment for our employees. If something else comes in and it doesn't fit that, I've got to be better at being able to say, that's going to have to be saved for another time. And I'm learning that after 2 years. So not that we're doing things that are bad, but there's just so much that everyone feels we could do to be better, that you have to be able to filter some of that to stay prioritized on what we need to focus on. And that's a tough thing to balance for a superintendent, I'm learning. So I'm going to continue to grow in that area and continue to grow my communication skills to have those tough conversations.
Dr. Goggins, with your heart and your focus and purpose on serving others first and foremost, I'm confident you're going to get there, my friend. And those priorities of focus that are truly priorities of focus are going to be the ones that bring that constancy of purpose.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, my friend. Our time is up, unfortunately, but would love to have you back. There's so much more that I'd love to talk about with you, and just appreciate the conversation. Certainly appreciate you from the bottom of my heart for the time, but for all you've meant to so many children, so many parents, so many school communities in the past, currently, and what's ahead in the future. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity to share. We're going to keep moving forward and focusing on kids. That's what we do. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that anytime.
Focus on kids. That's what the world's about, God's youngest children. And we've got, with leaders like Dr. Eric Goggins, we've got the right people at the helm. Dr. Goggins, thank you. We're here to help you in any way. Don't hesitate to reach out when that time comes.
Thanks, Dr. Smith.
For Dr. Goggins, I'm Kevin Smith. I want to thank you and just remind again for your time, for your energy to move forward. Be aware that it's okay to step back, take a deep breath. Still isn't about stopping. Still is about pause, reflection, clearing the mind, allowing what is the next best step to occur to become evident, and then moving forward. I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do on behalf of leadership, on behalf of those you serve, but most importantly, on serving yourself. Add that value to self, and you'll multiply in triplicate the value you bring to others. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. On behalf of Dr. Goggins, again, thank you for these past 2 weeks joining us. Until next week, I appreciate you. God bless.